Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with the revenge that our OP committed against his grandfather because he liked to take things that don't belong to him and did not see anything wrong in it. Well, the revenge was pretty unusual. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Getting back at that person who doesn't respect anyone but themselves. So back in June, I ditched my old rust bucket of a car and bought the car of my dreams. Naturally, after working so hard for close to a year to afford this car, I'm gonna baby the hell out of it, so I went out and bought some of my favorite high-end car soap and wax because I wanted it to look good. And I wanted to stay looking good for a long time. After using the soap one time, I leave everything out to dry before putting it away so nothing gets smelly or moldy. I come back a few hours later to find all my stuff moved from where I left it. After searching for probably 15 minutes, I find my soap bottle empty in the trash can. Surely no one used all my soap and detailing supplies on one car wash, right? So I do some investigating and find that my grandfather decided to dump all $40 of my detailing supplies into his $2 bottle of off-brand soap, then proceeded to use my towels, mitts, and scrubbers to clean off our dirty tractor, ruining all of it. When I asked him why he thought it would be a good idea to do that, he said, "Soap is soap. You don't need to spend your money on that fancy crap. It's all the same, so I consolidated it." After a long, drawn-out argument, the dust settles and we forget about the whole ordeal. Until the very next week when I go back to the store to rebuy all my things. Same exact thing happens again. He consolidates everything into one bottle, wasting money and ruining perfectly good product. Come to find out, he'd also been throwing away my dad's tools that he didn't need, taking up space on top of throwing away various parts and equipment that he also thought was unnecessary. After some scheming, me and my dad finally got our revenge. Weeks ago, we filled a bottle of Windex with Quick Auto Detailer, which is almost like liquid wax, and smudged up his truck windows. After weeks of just ignoring the filth, he finally decided to clean the windows with some good old Windex he had laying around for his truck. The detailer coated the windows and created a layer of thick film all over. It took him hours to get it cleaned off. It was hilarious to see him try and figure out what went wrong. It may have been small, but he's family, and I think this will teach him not to mess with other people's stuff. Tossing other people's personal property deserves a much more extreme revenge, in my opinion. Tools are sacred. And our second story. You prefer crappy, cheap wine? Okay, here you go. This is a story my father-in-law told me about his mother-in-law, who had money but was notoriously cheap with it. Dinner at her place could be a bit of an ordeal. Food was the cheapest available, the portions were so tiny you'd be hungrier when you finished than when you started, and she'd do things like buy super value, no-frills, supermarket, off-brand pack of mini bite-sized pies or chicken Kiev intended for parties, and serve one person as a main dish. She also watered down sauces, soups, and drinks mercilessly. 1 year after the extended family were getting together, as usual for Christmas at mother-in-law's house, this comprised several nuclear family groups, each of which traditionally provided one course, and this year it was mother-in-law's turn to provide the wine. When mother-in-law sent F to the kitchen to fetch the wine, all he could see was a single bottle of the cheapest substance you could possibly call wine. It had a plain white label with no text other than "Value Sweet Dessert Wine" and the supermarket's logo. F said he wouldn't have even risked cooking with the stuff. Even if it were higher quality, sweet dessert wine would probably not have been a pleasant accompaniment for the main course. Fortunately, F had a trick up his sleeve. Returning to the dining room, he asked mother-in-law as discreetly as he could if she didn't have anything a bit nicer for Christmas dinner. Her response was, "No, I prefer this. It's my favorite. You'll like it just fine." So F went back and opened mother-in-law's crappy cheap dessert wine and also a bottle of really nice wine he'd brought with him, which he hid behind his back as he poured mother-in-law's glass of plonk. When she saw the other bottle, she started yelling about having some respect for his mother-in-law. All he said in response was, "You said you preferred this one, so I made sure you got your favorite. What's the problem here?" Everyone else enjoyed the nice wine. Edit. I may have inadvertently made my father-in-law come across as a wine snob. He definitely isn't a wine snob, but by all accounts, this stuff was so poor quality, it was pretty much undrinkable. It was also too sweet to go with the food. The stuff he brought wouldn't have been show-off expensive, just nice. He doesn't drink wine often. What's the use of money if you don't enjoy it? And our next story. Got asked to step down from a position. Years ago, I taught Sunday school on a voluntary basis at a megachurch in my town. There were so many children in this church that classrooms were made available to group children with Sunday school teachers for every year of their life until middle school and high school, at which point they attended a larger group with similarly aged peers in separate wings of the building. I taught 2-year-olds and loved every moment of it. My classroom boasted a huge number of children, at about 20 to 25 per service. I was supposed to have an adult co-teacher, but all the other adult volunteers were sent to other classrooms with a higher need. I had 2 high school-age volunteers, best friends, who often spent service time playing together, despite repeated approaches asking them to play with the children. One of my volunteers was the director's son, who I couldn't replace because of his mother, who clearly did not want to be volunteering. Despite this, and despite inheriting a huge classroom full of several special needs children, my children played calmly throughout service and enjoyed a routine and simple rules I set to run the classroom efficiently. Children arrived, played calmly, sang songs, ate, snacked, and went home. Even in the face of this obvious evidence that my classroom was running efficiently, I was repeatedly asked by church leaders to adopt certain mannerisms around children I found inauthentic and frankly patronizing. I don't and won't speak in a high-pitched voice to anyone, child or adult. I don't and won't use words like upsy-daisy. These requests were persistent. It was the opinion of the church that I was not warm and welcoming enough. It was modeled again and again that the church would prefer I was over-animated in a huge smile, hug, I'm so glad you're here kind of greeting. One summer day, we were all called, some 50-plus room leaders and volunteers, into a mandatory meeting. You know those meetings where you instantly know they're talking about you? The policies on words like upsy-daisy were now set in writing, and I was shortly asked to step down for not using these phrases. I was not allowed to prepare my children for the transition to a new Sunday teacher. I was immediately replaced, by a friend actually, and was fairly crushed about the sudden break from little people I like spending time with. And furthermore, it made me question my abilities to work with children, an endeavor I'd already devoted my life to. Unbeknownst to my church, I had long been working at a career in early childhood intervention, teaching a classroom full of 2-year-old child victims of trauma and abuse with a heavy caseload of special needs children. My coworker called me over one Monday as I was the twos teacher, asking what I made of this email she just received concerning a church with an out-of-control twos room, requesting that someone come consult with their new staff and help implement some new classroom techniques to manage difficult behaviors. Naturally, I agreed to do the consult in person as soon as possible and asked my coworker to let them know I would meet them on a completely voluntary basis at their next Sunday service. It was absolutely my pleasure to greet my church leaders and friend as their specialist consultant. To their confused surprise, I walked them through all sorts of interventions and strategies I'd previously used to create a calm classroom environment and strongly advised against the use of overly excited greetings and phrases like upsy-daisy in place of direct redirective requests, like put your feet back on the floor. It was my strong written recommendation that the written policies on these strategies be amended and for staff to be immediately retrained in accordance with actual therapeutic practices. It was my last time stepping foot in that church and will forever remain my most deliciously cherished memories of vindication. So basically, they want you to talk like Dolores Umbridge. And our last story. EM demands me to get her son a job and give her my referral money. The EM in this case is my aunt, who's a typical Karen. 10 years ago, when I came to the U.S., she helped our family out during our first few weeks. She's used that as an excuse to trample all over us ever since. I argued with her a lot whenever she tried to bully my family. I, 28-year-old female, am currently working as a software engineer in a very large tech company. Her son, 22-year-old male, whom I'll call Steve, graduated college with a bachelor in computer science earlier this year but hasn't found a job yet. Thus, a few months ago, EM reached out to me to get her son a job. Not really a nice ask like, "Hey OP, can you help get Cousin Steve a job at your company? But you need to get Cousin Steve a job because it's your responsibility and my son deserves it." I asked her what I would get for getting him a job, and she told me it's the least I could do to pay her back for her help 10 years ago. So I helped him fix his god-awful resume and passed it to my company's college program. I know a few recruiters in my company, so I followed up with them to get him an interview. Without a referral, resumes can be filtered out by some computers, so it's much more difficult to get interviews. My cousin managed to get an offer and accepted it. At my company, whenever you refer a candidate and they accept the offer, you get a referral bonus, which is dependent on how experienced they are. Since Steve was a new grad, the bonus wasn't huge, but still decent. Let's say $1,500. In a recent family gathering, I was minding my own business when Steve came over. He works in a different office and different team, but I knew it's hard for fresh engineers to onboard remotely during this pandemic. We chatted about tips to get promotions quickly. I'm 2 ranks above him and have quite a lot of experience navigating the corporate world. During the conversation, Steve asked if I got my referral money for his referral yet, and I told him that I did and thanked him for accepting the offer. EM heard this from across the room and immediately came to tell me to hand over that money. Of course, I refused, which made her extremely angry. She yelled, saying, "I make so much money being single with no responsibilities, while she's a mom. B, your son is 22 and already started working." She told me that without Steve being such a genius and got the offer, I would not have gotten a dime, and for that, I should give the money to her. Steve tried to calm her down to no avail and asked me to maybe give her half, $700. I told him that's all I received after taxes. I told him to give her his $20K sign-on bonus, which was standard for new hires at his experience in my company. Right upon hearing this, the EM quickly turned her anger towards her son because he apparently had not told her and kept all the money to himself. Anyways, the money's now going towards my new piano, and I'm blocking EM on all social media. Should have asked EM for the fee that a recruiter would get for helping the cousin. I think it normally could be about 20%. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.